All right, today we are diving into one of the most provocative, maybe one of the most controversial laws in Robert Greene's entire book, The 48 Laws of Power. This is law number 7. And look, it's a principle that's practically designed to make you uncomfortable. But Greene argues it's absolutely essential for dealing with the world as it actually is, not how we wish it were. So let's get into it.
Wow. Okay. There it is, right out of the gate. Law 7 is not about collaboration. It's not about teamwork. It's about using other people's efforts as a stepping stone, and then making damn sure that when the history books are written, your name is the only one in bold. It's a pretty ruthless concept, and honestly, we're just getting started.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't this just stealing or just being plain lazy? Well, Greene frames it in a totally different way. He says this isn't about avoiding work at all. It's about a kind of ultimate efficiency, a way to multiply your own power and impact far beyond what any single person could ever hope to achieve alone. So here's the basic idea. Your time and your energy, they're your most precious, finite resources. By leveraging the work of others, you save your own strength for what really matters, things like grand strategy, vision, and cementing your own position. When you do this, you start to create this aura of almost impossible productivity. You seem superhuman, like you're moving at the speed of light. It's as much about managing perception as it is about actual output.
To really hammer home what's at stake here, we have to look at what happens when you completely ignore this law. And there is no sadder or more perfect example than a man whose genius was only matched by his total failure to play the game of power.
Nikola Tesla. I mean, the name itself is practically synonymous with genius, right? But his story, it's a massive warning sign. This was a true visionary. The man literally imagined the electrical world we live in today. But he was just disastrously naive when it came to the people who were going to get rich and famous off of that very vision.
Just look at this timeline. It shows a truly devastating pattern. It all starts with Thomas Edison, who basically scams Tesla out of a fortune that would be worth millions today. Then, his revolutionary AC power system, the thing our entire electrical grid is based on, it makes fortunes for other people while he gets pushed to the side. And then, the final insult, the invention of the radio, which was built squarely on his patents, gets credited to Marconi. Every single step of the way, his genius was harvested by someone else, and he was left with nothing. The result is just tragic. Tesla dies completely broke, while the men who used his work became household names.
And this right here is the lesson in a nutshell. Tesla was the brilliant mind who did the back-breaking revolutionary work. But Edison was the master marketer who understood that in the game of power, credit is often way more valuable than the actual creation. So Tesla invents the future, but Edison becomes the face of that future. One died in poverty, the other became an American icon. That's the brutal price of ignoring Law 7.
And hey, if you had any doubt about how Edison saw the world, he laid it out himself. He wasn't just an inventor, he was a master player of the game. He knew that in the ruthless world of business and power, knowing how to take credit was a skill you had to practice and perfect, just like anything else. Okay, so we've seen the disaster that can happen when you fail to use this law. So how do you actually master it? Well, the book lays out some very clear and, very ruthless strategies for making sure you're never the Tesla in your own story.
The very first thing you have to do is change your mindset. You have to start seeing the world for what it is, a jungle. It's a competitive ecosystem. And in this jungle, you can either be the one who creates something beautiful and gets eaten, or you can be the predator who understands the terrain. According to Greene, there really isn't a third option. So the first model for going on the attack is what Greene calls the vulture. This means you're constantly scanning the landscape, always on the lookout for brilliant work done by people who just don't have the stomach or the savvy to capitalize on it. You find that forgotten piece of research, that half-finished project, and you see the potential that they missed. And then you make it yours.
But there is an even more powerful model, the orchestrator. Think about the famous artist Peter Paul Rubens. He ran this huge workshop, and it was filled with incredibly talented painters who specialized in everything from painting luxurious fabrics to capturing perfect facial expressions. They did all the painstaking work, but when a new masterpiece was finished and rolled out of that studio, it only had one signature on it, Rubens. He became a legend by basically conducting a symphony of other people's talent and then putting his name on the final piece.
So the process is actually pretty simple when you break it down. Step 1, find the people who have the skills you need. Step 2, put them to work doing the hard stuff. Step 3, and this is the absolute key, put your name and only your name
on the finished product. The result? Their hard work builds your reputation, and you look like an absolute genius to the rest of the world.
But listen, like all of these laws of power, this one is not a blunt instrument. You can't just apply it everywhere all the time. Pushing it too far or using it at the wrong moment can completely backfire. The true master of power knows when to break the rule, and that's called the art of reversal.
So you really have to ask yourself, is taking all the credit every single time really the smartest play? And the answer, of course, is a hard no. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is actually share the credit.
The book points out two absolutely critical situations where you need to hold back. First, if your own position isn't totally secure yet, if you try to steal the spotlight, then you're just going to look manipulative and weak. People will see right through it. Second, and this is even more important, if you have a powerful boss or a patron above you, trying to grab credit is basically career suicide. In that situation, your job is to make them look good.
Let's look at a true masterclass in how this works. President Nixon's historic trip to China back in 1972 was this huge, world-changing achievement. Now, the big idea, that was Nixon's. But it was the tireless, incredibly delicate diplomacy of his national security advisor, Henry Kissinger, that actually made it happen. Kissinger did all the legwork. But when it was time for the victory lap, Kissinger played it perfectly. He stepped back and let Nixon soak up almost all of the public credit. Now, why would he do that? Because he was smart. He knew his own role would become clear over time, and in the short term, he made his boss incredibly happy, solidifying his own power. So here's the ultimate strategy. Take credit for the work of those beneath you, but graciously give credit for your own work to those above you. That is how you master the complex game of power. And that really brings us to the final lingering question. After seeing the tragedy of Tesla and the clever maneuvering of Kissinger, what is this law at its core? Is it just a cold, logical tool for getting ahead in a tough world? Or is it nothing more than a fancy justification for betrayal and exploitation? I think the answer, as with all things related to power, probably depends on whose hands it's in.